We often talk about how it's important to respect the tenets of our democracy, even when we lose. And one of the main tenets of that democracy is making sure there is an orderly and peaceful transfer of power to the incoming administration. And even though Donald Trump never participated in the peaceful transfer of power when he lost to Joe Biden, I don't think there was a question in anybody's mind whether or not Kamala Harris would stand up and do the right thing even if she lost. And in fact, she came out and reiterated the fact of just how important our peaceful transfer of power is, even in a fragile democracy.
The peaceful transfer of power is one of the most fundamental principles of American democracy. As much as any other principle, it is what distinguishes our system of government from monarchy or tyranny. Today at the United States Capitol, I will perform my constitutional duty as Vice President of the United States to certify the results of the 2024 election. This duty is a sacred obligation, one I will uphold, guided by love of country, loyalty to our Constitution, and my unwavering faith in the American people. As we have seen, our democracy can be fragile, and it is up to then each one of us to stand up for our most cherished principles and to make sure that in America, our government always remains of the people, by the people, and for the people.
Now, I know is probably some of you out there that just isn't feeling too great about what Kamala Harris is doing here, but I want to remind you that these little things, they still matter. Even if we have a Republican Party that seems to be an obstructionist in everything they do, in a blind pursuit of power, even if we have a party that is trying to tear it all down and trying to undermine us every step of the way, when it comes to one of the core tenets of our democracy, which is the peaceful transfer of power, it is still important to abide by those rules and those norms and making sure that we are upholding the vow to the Constitution. And it might seem counterintuitive to play by the rules when the other side is not, but what happens if both sides are trying to tear it all down? Does it really make sense for us to go out there and try to burn everything down to the ground and then try to rebuild it in our own image? It doesn't seem like that is a recipe for success. It doesn't seem like a struggling democracy would benefit from that. I think it's important that we nurture and strengthen the institutions that we have, and then when we reclaim power again, we can strengthen the institutions even more and make the types of reforms that we are seeking. But I do think it's important to acknowledge here that the norms and the Constitution and the pillar of democracy that is the peaceful transfer of power is still important. And even though Kamala Harris lost this election, she still had the strength and the courage and the dignity to stand in front of the gallery of people and certify this election without a single objection. And she did it with grace and, like I said, with dignity. Let's go ahead and watch her read off the final electoral count.
The votes for President of the United States are as follows. Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 312 votes. Kamala D. Harris Kamala D. Harris of the state of California has received 226 votes.
God, Mike Johnson is such an irritating little nitwit, sitting behind her smiling like a creep that he is. But I digress. I think it took strength and courage for Kamala Harris to stand there with a stoic stance, listen to every single state, count off their electoral votes, and then at the end, she comes together and adds them all up, just like we would expect our vice president to do. And she just moves through the process like we would want her to do. And then she goes on to certify the Electoral College vote without any issues. There is no complaining, no bitching, no petulant child behavior. It is just Kamala Harris, somebody who respects our democracy, who took a vow to our Constitution, who respects the American people, certifying the election that she just lost. Narrowly, I might add. But she did it nonetheless.
This announcement of the state of the vote by the President of the Senate shall be deemed a sufficient declaration of the persons elected President and Vice President of the United States, each for a term beginning on the 20th day of January 2025, and shall be entered together with the list of the votes on the journals of the House and the Senate. Thank you very much.
And that was that. And it is such a stark contrast to where we were just 4 years ago. We remember, I think, more than 100 representatives and senators objected to the results of a free and fair election in 2020. And then Donald Trump riled up his supporters, and they went down and attacked the Capitol in an effort to try to stop the certification of that election. Because Donald Trump is a petulant child. Because Donald Trump is an authoritarian wannabe with fascist tendencies. You aren't seeing that out of Kamala Harris here. And I think it showed even more class when she came out and gave another statement after the certification was all done, where she just reiterated yet again that it is so important to respect our democracy even when we lose.
Well, today was obviously a very important day, and it was about what should be the norm and what the American people should be able to take for granted, which is that one of the most important pillars of our democracy is that there will be a peaceful transfer of power. And today I did what I have done my entire career, which is take seriously the oath that I have taken many times to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, which included today performing my constitutional duties to ensure that the people of America, the voters of America, will have their votes counted, that those votes matter, and that they will determine then the outcome of an election. I do believe very strongly that America's democracy is only as strong as our willingness to fight for it. Every single person, their willingness to fight for and respect the importance of our democracy. Otherwise, it is very fragile, and it will not be able to withstand moments of crisis. And today, America's democracy stood.
And today, America's democracy stood. Now, we don't know what the next 4 years are going to look like. We know Donald Trump and his administration are promising to carry out a whole bunch of things that could very well be devastating to this country. But I do think it's important that we acknowledge and give praise to Kamala Harris for doing the right thing, even when it's tough. And she proved to the American people yet again that she is just a morally superior individual than Donald Trump will ever be. It's not the Democrats that are objecting to the election and storming the Capitol and beating the shit out of police officers. It's not the Democrats that are trying to tear down this democracy. That was MAGA and Donald Trump. So it might not seem like a big deal that the certification went off without a hitch, But I think it's important that, especially now, after Donald Trump has desecrated our country and put a stain on this country's history, I think it's important that we acknowledge these little things that actually do matter, whether or not they are procedural or ceremonial. Kamala Harris showed that she loved this country even when she lost, and she was willing to follow through with her vow to the Constitution. And I think that she should be given praise for that. So I will leave it there for now, guys. If you got anything out of this video, please remember to smash that like button and subscribe. Maybe share with a friend or two. I'd very much appreciate that. If you want to see how MAGA and Donald Trump are trying to rewrite history as it pertains to January 6th, go ahead and watch that video on the screen now. Otherwise, I'll see you guys on the next one.